A young billionaire helped a homeless woman carrying two babies in the rain, but when he looked in her wallet, he found a photo that changed everything. Heavy rain poured down that Friday night. Michael Anderson was driving his black Audi along the city's main avenue, returning from a business meeting. At 35, he ran a tech empire valued in the billions. His windshield wipers were on full blast, but they could barely clear the water cascading down the glass. "What a miserable night," he muttered, turning up the heater. The radio played a soft jazz tune, a stark contrast to the violent storm outside. That was when his headlights illuminated a stumbling figure on the sidewalk. A woman, completely drenched, was carrying something in her arms. Michael instinctively slowed down. As he drove by, he realized it wasn't just something. She was protecting two small bundles from the rain with her own body. "Babies," he murmured in disbelief. Michael drove on, but the image lingered in his mind. The rearview mirror showed the woman continuing her painful trek through the downpour. His fingers gripped the steering wheel as inner conflict tugged at him. "Not my problem," he tried to convince himself. After driving another 100 yards, he cursed under his breath and made a U-turn at the first opportunity. He stopped the car beside the woman and rolled down the window. "Hey, need help?" The woman stopped, wary. Even in the darkness, her eyes revealed fear and exhaustion. She looked to be about 30, but fatigue had aged her face. Her brown hair clung to her wet cheeks. "I'm fine, thanks," she replied automatically, pressing the babies tighter against her chest. Michael glanced at the sky. The rain showed no sign of letting up. "Look, it's pouring out here. Let me give you a ride. Where are you headed?" She hesitated, looking at the deserted street and then at the babies in her arms. One of them began to cry. I don't have anywhere to go," she finally confessed, her voice almost drowned out by the rain. Michael felt a pang in his chest. He was used to dealing with multi-million-dollar contracts and aggressive negotiations, not desperate people holding babies in the rain. "Get in the car," he said, unlocking the doors. "At least to get dry." The woman didn't move. "I'm not going to hurt you," Michael assured her. "I just want to help. Here, this is my wallet. Michael Anderson." He showed her his ID card. "You can hold on to it if you want, as collateral." After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, she approached and opened the back door with difficulty. She placed the babies on the seat first and then got in, shivering from the cold. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak. Michael turned up the heater. In the rearview mirror, he saw the babies, two identical boys who couldn't be more than 6 months old. "They're twins?" he asked, trying to break the ice. "Yes, Tom and Leo," she replied, adjusting the damp blankets covering them. "I'm heading to my place. It's safe, and you can dry off, get something to eat, and rest. We can figure out what to do next." "Sound okay?" She nodded reluctantly. Michael noticed her hands shaking as she gently stroked the babies' heads. "My name is Emma. Emma Carter," she said after a moment of silence. "Nice to meet you, Emma. You can trust me. I just want to help." For the rest of the drive, Emma remained quiet except for occasional whispers to calm the babies. Michael respected her silence, trying to understand what had prompted him to do this. He'd never been impulsive. Every step of his career had been calculated and planned. But something about that scene, the vulnerability of a mother and her babies, struck him deeply. Michael's mansion came into view after 20 minutes. The electronic gates opened, revealing an impressive property with manicured gardens and sophisticated lighting. Emma looked out the window, visibly intimidated. "We're here," Michael announced, parking under the main entrance's covered driveway. Emma seemed to hesitate again, as if suddenly realizing she was entering a complete stranger's house. "If you prefer, I can take you to a hotel. I'll cover the stay," Michael offered, noticing her discomfort. "No, here is fine," she replied, surprising both of them. "It's just, I've never been anywhere like this." Michael smiled, trying to reassure her. "Let's go inside. You need dry clothes and a hot meal." He opened the door for her and, without asking, took one of the babies in his arms to help. The little one stared at him with curious eyes, instantly stopping his crying. "Looks like he likes you," Emma remarked, offering the first smile since they met. The housekeeper, Mrs. Martinez, appeared in the doorway, surprised at the unusual scene. "Mr. Anderson." "Mrs. Martinez, this is Emma and her children. They'll stay with us tonight. Could you prepare the guest room in the East Wing, and maybe find some dry clothes and whatever else babies might need?" Used to discretion, the housekeeper merely nodded. "Leave it to me, sir. I'll get everything ready." As they entered the luxurious home, Michael watched Emma glance around, clearly overwhelmed by the surroundings. Her eyes reflected not just admiration, but a deep sadness that intrigued him. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." Michael couldn't find an answer. In truth, he didn't fully understand his own motives. In a world where every choice he made involved risk and return analyses, this impulsive gesture seemed out of character. "Sometimes people just help each other," he finally said, surprised by his own words. What he didn't know was that this rainy night would mark only the beginning of a journey that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. The guest room in Michael's mansion was bigger than many apartments. Emma looked around, still holding one of the babies, while Mrs. Martinez placed soft towels on the king-size bed. "The bathroom is over there," the housekeeper pointed out. "I left some dry clothes for you and found a few blankets for the little ones. I'll prepare something warm for you to eat." "Thank you," Emma mumbled, still feeling out of place amid such luxury. Michael stood at the door holding the other baby, who was now sleeping peacefully in his arms. It was strange how this child seemed so at ease with him, a man who rarely spent time around children. "Is it all right if I leave you two now?" he asked. "Do you need anything else?" Emma shook her head. "You've done more than enough. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." Michael handed the baby to Emma, who laid him on the bed among the pillows. Before leaving, he noticed a small wet bag on the floor. "Shall I take this to dry it out?" "Yes, thanks. My documents are in there." Michael picked up the soaked bag and closed the door. In the hallway, curiosity got the better of him. He opened it to see what it contained, justifying to himself that he needed to know more about the person he had brought into his home. Inside, he found an old wallet, a few small bills, some lipstick, tissues, and personal documents sealed in a plastic bag. At least she had protected those from the rain. He carefully opened the wallet to find very little money, a public transit pass, and a few photos. That was when his heart skipped a beat. Among the damp pictures was an image Michael recognized immediately. A middle-aged man smiling in front of a commercial building. Robert Anderson, his father. "What the hell?" he muttered, feeling a chill run down his spine. Michael looked more closely at the photo. There was no doubt it was his father, about 15 years younger. The picture had a small crease in the corner, as though it had been handled frequently. He turned it over and saw a handwritten date, June D. 2004, and the initials R.A. His mind raced in 1,000 directions. How did Emma have a photo of his father? What was the connection between them? Why did she keep this image in her wallet like a treasure? Michael checked Emma's documents. Her ID card confirmed she was 30 years old. He did the math. Back in 2004, she would have been around 9. His father had still been married to his mother back then, though the marriage was already rocky. He put everything back into the bag, except for the photo, which he slipped into his pocket. He went downstairs, feeling the weight of his discovery. In the kitchen, Mrs. Martinez was preparing soup. "Is something wrong, sir? You look pale." "Nothing, just tired," he lied. "When you're done, could you bring the food upstairs? I'll be in my office." Michael poured himself a whiskey and settled into the leather armchair in his study, the photo of his father in his hands. Robert Anderson, the ruthless magnate who had built a real estate empire before Michael diversified into technology. The same man who had been more of a business partner than a father all his life. "What did you do, Dad?" he whispered to the picture. Hours passed slowly. Michael rummaged through his files, searching for any clue linking his father to Emma Carter, but found nothing. By around 3 in the morning, exhausted, he decided to try to sleep. He paused in the hallway outside the guest room. The door was slightly ajar, and he couldn't resist peeking inside. Emma was fast asleep, with a twin on each side. Even in sleep, her arm formed a protective barrier around them. Michael felt a surge of guilt. This woman, whoever she was exhausted and vulnerable. Whatever connection she had to Robert Anderson could wait until morning. The first rays of sunlight found Michael already awake after a restless night. He drank a cup of strong coffee on the veranda overlooking the garden, trying to organize his thoughts. One of the baby's cries reached his ears. Instinctively, he walked toward the guest room. Through the partially open door, he saw Emma rocking one of the twins while the other still slept. "Shh, it's all right, Tom, Mummy's here," she whispered, gently swaying the baby. There was something mesmerizing about the way she cared for her children. Her movements were smooth and sure, revealing a skill that only comes with practice and genuine love. For a moment, Michael forgot all his questions and just watched. Emma looked up and noticed him. "Morning," she said, appearing more rested. "Sorry if he woke you." "He didn't. I was already up," Michael replied, stepping into the room. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." A faint smile crossed her lips. "Thank you for that." Michael looked at the baby, who was calming down in his mother's arms. His big blue eyes stared back innocently. "He looks much better today," Michael commented. "They're scared of the rain," Emma explained. "And we'd been walking for hours." Michael sat on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. "Emma, we need to talk about your situation. How did you end up on the street with 2 babies? She lowered her gaze, focusing on her son. "It's a long story." "I have time," he said gently. Emma sighed. "I lost my job when I found out I was pregnant. The twins' father disappeared the moment I told him. I tried to manage, but I fell behind on the rent and—" Her voice broke. "We've been in shelters for the past 3 weeks, whenever we could get a spot." Michael nodded, listening intently. It was a sad story, but not an uncommon one. It still didn't explain the photo of his father. "What about your family? Is there no one who can help?" Pain flashed in Emma's eyes. "It's just me and my mums, and we don't speak much." Michael decided it was time to be direct. He pulled the photo out of his pocket and showed it to Emma. "I found this in your wallet. Do you know this man?" Emma's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in distrust. "You went through my things. I'm sorry, but I needed to know who I was bringing into my house," he justified. "Who is he to you, Emma?" She took the photo with her free hand, staring at it for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. "Why do you want to know?" she finally asked. "Because this man is Robert Anderson, my father." Emma's face went pale. The baby in her arms started crying again, as if sensing his mother's sudden tension. At that moment, the other twin also woke up, adding his cries to his brother's. Within seconds, the room was filled with the baby's distressed wailing. "I need to take care of them now," Emma said, her voice trembling. "We can talk about this later." Michael realized he had struck a nerve. He stood up, nodding. "Sure. I'll be downstairs when you're ready." He left the room, gently closing the door behind him, but not before hearing Emma murmur to the babies, "It's okay, my loves. Mommy will take care of you. Always." Robert Anderson's photo lay on the bed between Emma and the twins, a puzzle piece linking the past to the present in ways Michael still couldn't comprehend. Michael stared at his computer screen in his office, unable to focus on the numbers in the open spreadsheet. His mind was fixed on the woman and the babies upstairs and on the photo he had found. Robert Anderson had always been more of a businessman than a father. Michael's childhood memories were of a man too busy to attend school events or birthdays, always in the name of business. As Michael grew, their relationship became even more distant, turning into a colder, efficient business partnership. "What else did you hide besides your affection, Dad?" he murmured to himself. Soft footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Emma appeared at the office door, carrying one of the twins. The other was in a makeshift sling Mrs. Martinez had fashioned from a sheet. "Can I come in?" she asked hesitantly. Michael stood immediately. "Of course." "Please have a seat." Emma settled into the armchair opposite the desk, adjusting the babies. She was wearing the clothes the housekeeper had found, sweatpants and a simple t-shirt, both too large for her slim frame. "Thanks for the clothes and for breakfast," she began. "Your housekeeper was really kind." "No need to thank me," Michael replied, observing her closely. "Emma, we need to talk about the photo." She sighed, looking at the babies as though seeking courage in them. "What do you want to know exactly? How do you know my father? Why do you keep a photo of him?" Emma averted her eyes, focusing on the window overlooking the garden. It's complicated. I have time, Michael repeated, echoing his words from earlier. And since you're staying in my house, I think I deserve to know. Their gazes locked, and Michael saw a mix of fear and determination in her eyes. I don't know what you expect me to say, Emma responded, her voice firm despite her tension. That photo, it's personal. Michael felt his frustration rising. Look, if this is some kind of scam— A scam, Emma interrupted, outraged. You think I plan to be homeless in the rain with 2 babies just so you'd happen to find me? One of the twins began crying at her raised voice. Emma took a deep breath, calming down as she soothed the baby. I'm sorry, Michael said after a moment. That was an unfair accusation. Silence hung between them, broken only by the baby's soft whimpering. I'm not going to force you to talk, he continued, but I need to understand what's going on. Emma adjusted the baby on her lap, thoughtful. I don't understand a lot of it myself. That photo, my mother gave it to me. That's all I know. Michael realized she wasn't lying, but also sensed she wasn't sharing everything. He decided to change tactics. What are their names? He asked, indicating the twins. Emma's face immediately softened. This one is Leo, she said, pointing to the baby in the sling. And this is Tom, she added, looking at the one in her arms. They're 6 months old. They're beautiful, Michael said genuinely. They look like you. A slight smile appeared on Emma's lips. Thank you. Michael stood and walked to the window, gazing at his vast garden. He had made a decision. I'm going to hire someone to investigate this situation, he announced, turning to face Emma. Not to harm you, but to figure out what's happening. She didn't look surprised. You have that right, I suppose. In the meantime, you and the twins can stay here, unless you'd prefer to go somewhere else. Emma looked at him warily. Why would you do that? Why help us? It was a valid question, and Michael wasn't sure of the answer. Maybe because it's the right thing to do. Or maybe because I want to find out your connection to my father. Pick whichever reason you like. Tom started fussing on Emma's lap. She soothed him with gentle, automatic motions. I have nowhere else to go, she finally admitted, but as soon as I get a job and a place to stay, we'll be out of your life. Michael nodded. Deal. He took out his phone and typed a quick message. I've just contacted Tom Reynolds, a private investigator who works for my company. He's discreet and efficient. Emma didn't respond, busy tending to Tom, who was crying louder now. I think he's hungry, she explained. Could I— Of course, take your time, Michael said quickly. Should I call Mrs. Martinez? No need. I'm used to doing things myself. Michael stood. I'll let you have some privacy. If you need anything, I'll be in the living room. Before leaving, he paused at the door. Emma, no matter what we find out, I promise you, and the babies will be safe here. She only nodded, already focused on feeding Tom. Michael shut the door softly behind him. In the living room, he took his phone again and dialed Tom Reynolds. Good morning, Mr. Anderson, answered the detective with his usual efficiency. Tom, I need a personal favor, extremely confidential, Michael began. I want you to investigate someone for me. Her name is Emma Carter, 30 years old. Any particular reason? Michael hesitated. I believe she might have some connection to my father. I want to know what it is. Understood. Do you have any basic info? I'll email you what I have so far, but I need this done quickly and, above all, discreetly. As always, sir. I'll start today. Michael hung up and looked out the window again. Last night's rain had stopped, leaving the garden shining under renewed light. Somehow, his life felt completely different in less than 24 hours. From upstairs, he could hear Emma softly singing to the babies. That sound stirred a strange feeling inside him, a mixture of curiosity and something he couldn't name. He had never given much thought to having kids. His life was dedicated to business, following in the footsteps of the father he so often criticized. But now, watching Emma with her twins, something inside him was awakening, a question about what really mattered in life. What did you hide, Dad? He whispered again. And how will it change our lives? The answer, he knew, would soon reveal itself. And for the first time in years, Michael Anderson had no idea what to expect. Tom Reynolds was a meticulous man. A former police investigator, he now worked exclusively for select clients, with Michael Anderson being his main contractor. Seated in his modest office, he studied the scant information he had on Emma Carter. Full name, Emma Louise Carter. Age, 30. Mother of twin 6-month-old boys. Not much to go on, he murmured, sipping his coffee. He opened his laptop and began a digital search. This was always the first step, checking social media, public records, any trace the person might have left online. Surprisingly, Emma had very little online presence. A social media profile that hadn't been updated in over a year, no professional accounts. It was as though she'd dropped off the digital grid since her pregnancy. Tom jotted notes in his black notebook. He'd need to do some field work to uncover more. Back at Michael's mansion, the day followed an improvised routine. Emma spent the morning caring for the babies while Michael tried, with little success, to focus on work in his office. Around 2 in the afternoon, he decided to try again to get some answers. He found Emma in the sunroom, seated in an armchair as the twins slept in a makeshift crib Mrs. Martinez had provided. "How are they?" Michael asked, approaching. Emma looked up from the book she'd been skimming. "They finally fell asleep. Your housekeeper has been so kind. She brought diapers and some clothes." Michael sat in the armchair beside her. "Emma, I really need you to tell me more about yourself. I can't help if I don't know what you're going through." She closed the book, sighing. "There's not much to tell. I worked as a sales clerk in a department store. When I got pregnant, I started missing shifts because of morning sickness. I was fired. The twins' father disappeared as soon as I told him. That's it. And your mother? You mentioned you have one." Emma's eyes drifted to the garden, visible through the glass windows. "Sarah. She lives in another town. We rarely speak." "Why?" "Our relationship has always been complicated. She raised me alone, working 2 jobs. But there were always secrets between us." Michael leaned forward. "Secrets like your father's identity and that photo of mine?" Emma shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want to talk about that. I don't understand why you're so fixated on it." "Because there could be a connection between us we don't know about," Michael replied calmly. "What if we're related?" The word hung in the air. Emma paled slightly. "That's ridiculous," she said finally. "Just because I have a photo of your father doesn't mean anything. So why keep it like a treasure? Why do you get so nervous when I bring it up?" Before Emma could answer, one of the babies stirred, starting to cry. She stood quickly, seeming relieved by the interruption. "I need to tend to him." Michael watched as she lifted Leo into her arms, rocking him with smooth, practiced movements. There was something so natural and fluid in how she cared for the children, a tenderness that made him feel like an intruder. "You're a good mother," he commented, standing. Emma looked at him, surprised by the unexpected compliment. "I'm doing the best I can. I'll leave you alone. Maybe we can have dinner together later, if you like." She nodded slightly. "Thanks. For everything." Michael left the sunroom with more questions than when he'd entered. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Tom Reynolds. "I've got some preliminary information," Tom said, seated across from Michael in the study. "Emma Louise Carter, born in Riverdale. Mother's name is Sarah Carter, no father listed on the birth certificate." Michael nodded, absorbing the information. "Go on." Sarah Carter worked various secretarial jobs over the years. Interestingly, from 2003 to 2005, she worked at Anderson Enterprises. Michael felt his heart quicken. "My father's company?" "Yes." She was a secretary in the finance department, but got transferred to Robert Anderson's personal office during her last 6 months there. And then she resigned suddenly in March 2005. A few weeks later, she moved to another city with her daughter Emma, who was 10 at the time. Michael got up, restless. "That can't be a coincidence." "There's more," Tom continued. "I tracked down Sarah Carter. She lives in a modest house in a town called Cedar Grove, about 2 hours from here. She works as a manager at a local convenience store." "And Emma?" "From what I found, she really did work as a clerk until about a year ago. She was fired during her pregnancy. I found a labor lawsuit she filed against the store, but it was withdrawn before it went to trial. Why? Not sure yet. As for the twins' father, there's no official record. Their birth certificates don't list a father. Michael took in the new details in silence. There was a clear link between his family and Emma, but the precise nature of that connection was still unknown. "Want me to talk to Sarah Carter?" Tom asked. "Not yet, keep digging. See if there was any contact between my father and Sarah after she left the company. Look into bank transfers, properties, anything." Tom nodded, closing his notebook. "Shall I report anything about Emma?" Michael hesitated. "Just say she's safe. Don't mention she's with me for now." After the detective left, Michael was alone with his turbulent thoughts. The possibility forming in his mind was unsettling, yet it explained so much. The sound of crying babies reached his ears. Without much thought, he headed to the room where Emma was with the twins. He found her pacing back and forth, Tom crying inconsolably in her arms. Her face was marked by clear exhaustion. "Can I help?" Michael offered from the doorway. Emma turned, surprised. "He's been like this for almost an hour. I think he might be sick." Michael gently touched the baby's forehead. "He feels a bit warm." "I'm worried," Emma admitted, her voice shaking. "Back at the shelter, a baby got sick last week." Michael grabbed his phone. "I'll call Dr. Klein. He's our family doctor and can come over in half an hour." "I can't afford a private doctor," Emma protested weakly. "Don't worry about that," Michael said, already dialing. "All that matters is his well-being." While he spoke on the phone, he watched Emma resume rocking the baby, whispering words of comfort. Her intense concern moved him deeply. For the first time, he saw the twins not as part of a mystery, but as children who needed protection. When he hung up, he approached Emma and gently placed a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. She didn't pull away. "They'll be fine," he said with conviction he wasn't sure he felt. "We'll take care of him." Emma nodded, eyes brimming with contained tears. In that moment, they weren't strangers brought together by a puzzle, but two people united by concern for a defenseless child. The photo of Robert Anderson could wait. Some things were more important. Dr. Klein was a kindly older man whose grey hair and gentle manner inspired immediate confidence. After examining little Tom thoroughly, his diagnosis was reassuring. "Just a mild fever, likely a common viral infection," he explained, packing his instruments. "Nothing too alarming." Emma exhaled with relief. "You're sure?" "He's never been this fussy before. Children this age can get quite uncomfortable even with mild fevers," said the doctor, smiling. "I'll prescribe a baby-safe fever reducer. Keep him hydrated and monitor his temperature. If it goes above 100 or doesn't go down in 48 hours, call me." Michael High, who'd been watching from the doorway, came closer. "Thanks for coming so quickly, Doctor." "For you, always," Dr. Klein replied, having known the Anderson family for decades. He cast a discreet glance at Emma and the twins, clearly curious, but far too professional to pry. As Michael walked him to the door, Emma stayed in the room, rocking Tom, who had finally calmed down. "Didn't realize you'd started a family, Michael," Dr. Klein remarked once they reached the entrance. "It's complicated," Michael replied. "I'd rather not talk about it for now." The doctor nodded, understanding. "I see. Those babies look well cared for despite the circumstances. Their mother is clearly devoted." "Yes, she is," Michael said thoughtfully. After the doctor left, Michael returned to the room. Emma had put Tom to sleep and was now checking on Leo, who was quietly playing with a simple toy Mrs. Martinez had improvised. "Dr. Klein is trustworthy," Michael said. "He's been looking after my family since I was a kid." Emma nodded. "He seems good. Thanks for calling him." Michael sat on the edge of the bed. "I need to tell you something. My detective discovered your mother, Sarah, worked for my father years ago." Emma's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't appear shocked. "I knew she worked in a big company when I was a kid. She never said it was your father's." "She worked directly for him for the last few months before she left," Michael continued. "Then, soon after, you both moved away." Emma looked away, focusing on Leo. "What else did your detective find?" "That you filed a labor lawsuit against your last employer, but withdrew it before it got to court." Emma exhaled in frustration. Are you investigating my entire life? I'm trying to figure out what's going on, Michael replied calmly. Emma, there's a connection between our families. You must know what it is. Emma remained silent for a long moment, softly stroking Leo's head. Finally, she spoke in a low voice. My mom never talked much about her time working there. She only said she left because she needed a fresh start. I grew up not knowing who my father was. Whenever I asked, she brushed me off or said he wasn't part of our lives. And the photo of my father. She gave it to me on my 18th birthday. She just said, "You have the right to know what he looks like." That was it. Michael processed that information, feeling puzzle pieces clicking into place. Do you think my father might be? I don't know, Emma cut him off. And honestly, I didn't want to find out this way. I spent years trying not to think about it. Then why keep the photo? Emma looked at the sleeping baby. Because everyone deserves to know where they come from, even if it's just a photo. Silence settled between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. I'm going to the pharmacy to get Tom's medication, Michael finally said, standing. Do you need anything for yourself or Leo? No, thank you. You've done so much already. Michael paused at the door. Emma, no matter what we find out, it doesn't change the fact that you and the twins are safe here. Take as long as you need to feel comfortable talking about it. She nodded slightly, not meeting his gaze. Michael left, closing the door gently behind him. Meanwhile, Tom Reynolds had tracked down a former Anderson Enterprises employee who had worked alongside Sarah Carter. Elizabeth Peterson, now almost 70, received a generous pension from the company after 35 years of service. Sarah Carter. Of course I remember her, Elizabeth said, pouring tea in her antiques-filled living room. A pretty, efficient young woman. She started in the finance department, and then she was transferred to work directly with Robert, Tom prompted, accepting the offered cup. Elizabeth gave a knowing smile. Officially, because she was very competent. Unofficially. She paused meaningfully. Well, there were rumors. What kind of rumors? Robert always had a soft spot for attractive women, even though he was married. Sarah was particularly striking. Brown hair, big eyes. Her daughter would sometimes come by after school. Tom mentally noted this. Did those rumors have any basis? Elizabeth took a sip of tea. I've worked long enough in corporations to tell when something's going on. The looks, the extended lunches, closed-door meetings. She shrugged. But Robert was always discreet about his interests. Sarah left suddenly. Do you know why? Elizabeth's expression grew serious. That was strange. One day she was there. The next day her office was empty. The official story was she quit for personal reasons, but there was talk of a heated argument between her and Robert. Any idea what might have caused that argument? Not for sure, but it happened around the time Robert's wife, Elaine, started spending more time at the office, getting more involved in the business. Elizabeth leaned forward as though sharing a secret. Some said Elaine discovered something about Robert and Sarah. Tom thanked Elizabeth for the information and left, pensive. Pieces were starting to fall into place, forming a picture that could drastically alter the Anderson family dynamic. Back at the mansion, Michael pored over old financial records from his father's accounts. Years of running the company alongside Robert had given him access to nearly every fiscal record. Among the files, he discovered a series of monthly payments to an account in the name of SC Trust, starting right after Sarah Carter left the company and continuing for years. The amounts weren't huge but consistent, like a pension or hush money. How you paid for her silence, Dad, Michael muttered, examining the statements. Soft footsteps made him look up. Emma stood in the office doorway, holding Leo. Tom finally slept peacefully, she said. His fever went down with the medicine. That's good, Michael replied, quickly minimizing the computer screen. Are you hungry, Mrs.? Martinez prepared something. Emma hesitated, then stepped into the office. Before that, I wanted to tell you something about my mom. Michael waited, trying not to show how anxious he was for more information. I called her today, Emma continued. I didn't say where I am or mention you, but I told her I was thinking of looking for my biological father. And what did she say? Emma adjusted Leo in her arms. She cried. Then she said she always knew this day would come. Her voice wavered. She asked for time to prepare before we talk in person. That confirms something big is going on, Michael concluded. Yeah. And honestly, I'm scared of what I'll find out. Emma looked Michael in the eye. If it's true, if your father is my father, that changes everything. Michael stood and approached her. You don't have to be afraid. Whatever the truth is, we'll face it together. For the first time since they met, Emma smiled at him. A small, genuine smile. Thank you for everything you're doing. Let's go eat, Michael suggested, gently guiding her by the back. The babies need a mom who's well fed. As they left the office, Michael gave one last glance at the minimized payment records. Whatever the truth about Robert Anderson's past, he was determined to uncover it for Emma, the twins, and himself. Tom Reynolds watched Elizabeth Peterson intently. The former Anderson Enterprises employee refilled his porcelain teacup as she organized her thoughts. So you worked with Sarah Carter? The detective asked. For almost 2 years, Elizabeth replied, settling into her floral armchair. A smart, efficient young woman. Started in the finance department. Then she was transferred to work directly under Robert Anderson. Elizabeth smiled faintly. Exactly. A quick promotion for someone so young. Do you know why she was chosen? The gray-haired woman shrugged. Officially, for her competence. Unofficially, it is, well, there were rumors. What kind of rumors? Robert always had a thing for pretty women, she said, lowering her voice as if someone could overhear them. And Sarah was exceptionally pretty. Young, brown hair, big eyes. I've spent enough time in big companies to notice the signs. Signs? Lingering looks, long lunches, closed-door meetings. Elizabeth sipped her tea. Robert was married, of course, but that never stopped him from admiring other women. Tom took notes. And her sudden departure. Records show no warning. Elizabeth's expression grew solemn. Yes, that was odd. One day she was working normally. The next, her office was empty. People said she quit for personal reasons. No notice? None. And it coincided with a time when Elaine, Robert's wife, started showing up at the office more often. Elizabeth leaned in conspiratorially. There was talk of a big argument between Robert and Sarah the day before she disappeared. Tom thanked her for the information and left, calling Michael immediately. At Anderson Enterprises headquarters, Michael listened intently to the detective's report over the phone. Each new detail fueled his doubts. A sudden departure, no explanation, he murmured after ending the call. And right after that, the monthly payments started. Michael walked to his office window. Emma was in the mansion's garden with the babies, enjoying the morning sun. He watched her smile as she played with the twins, an expression of genuine happiness that clashed with her dire situation just days earlier. The puzzle pieces were fitting together in his mind, forming a disturbing picture. He was beginning to suspect Emma might be his half-sister, Robert Anderson's daughter with Sarah Carter. He decided to join Emma in the garden, trying to appear casual. They look happy out here, he commented, approaching. Emma smiled, watching Leo attempt to crawl on the grass. It's their first time playing in a real garden. At the shelter, we only had a concrete yard. Michael sat beside her on the wooden bench. Emma, I'd like to know more about your childhood. She looked at him with a mix of curiosity and caution. Why? Just trying to get to know you better, he said in a light tone. We are living under the same roof, after all. Emma sighed, turning her attention back to the twins. There isn't much to tell. I grew up in Cedar Grove, a small town. Just me and my mom. What about your father? Her eyes drifted away, landing on a distant point. That was always a complicated subject at home. As a kid, I asked about him a lot. My mother always dodged the question. She never told you anything. She only said he was a busy, important man who couldn't be part of our lives. Emma adjusted the blanket under Tom, who was lying down. When I kept pushing, she'd get tense. Sometimes she'd even cry. Eventually, I learned to stop asking. Michael quietly absorbed that, every detail reinforcing his theory. When she gave you the photo, he said, Did you think you'd finally know more? I did, but all she told me was, now you know what he looks like. The rest doesn't matter. And you accepted that. What else could I do? She clearly didn't want to talk about him. Emma picked up Tom when he began to whimper. Besides, I had my own problems by then. Michael noticed how tenderly she cared for the baby. What kind of problems? I was trying to get into college, working 2 jobs. I didn't have time to chase after a father who'd never bothered to meet me. A note of bitterness laced her voice. Silence settled in, broken only by the cooing of the babies. If you could ask him anything, Michael ventured, what would it be? Emma thought for a moment. I'd ask why he never wanted to meet me, if he knew about me, if he ever cared. Michael felt a knot in his chest. If his suspicions were correct, his father had deliberately kept Emma at a distance, paying hush money to Sarah. Michael, Emma said suddenly, I've been thinking about your job offer. Yes, I'd like to accept it, if it's still available. I need to rebuild my life, give my kids stability. Michael smiled, genuinely pleased. Of course it's available. We can arrange flexible hours that work for you and the twins. Thank you. She seemed relieved. I don't want to rely on your generosity forever. I need to stand on my own feet again. Don't see it as dependence, Michael replied. See it as an opportunity for both sides. The company gains a promising employee, and you rebuild your career. Emma smiled, grateful. It's strange how things happen, isn't it? A week ago I was desperate in the rain, and now... Life is unpredictable, Michael agreed. Sometimes in a good way. Leo started crying, interrupting the moment. Emma stood to pick him up. I'll go prepare their lunch, she said. We can talk more about the job later. Michael nodded, watching her return to the house with the twins in her arms. The sight made him reflect on how drastically his own life had changed in just a few days. Back in his office, Michael again reviewed the documents the detective had sent, payment records, dates coinciding with Sarah's pregnancy, her abrupt exit from the company. All of it pointed to a conclusion he could no longer ignore. The possibility that Emma was his father's daughter seemed more real by the minute. If that was true, it meant he had a half-sister he'd never known, who grew up without the privileges he'd always taken for granted, while their father stayed distant and merely provided financial support in secret. Tom Reynolds examined the documents spread across his desk. After days of meticulous investigation, he'd finally accessed confidential Anderson Enterprises files from the years Sarah Carter worked there. Interesting, he murmured, scanning an internal memo dated February 2005. The document detailed a series of private meetings between Robert Anderson and Sarah, all labeled Special Project Review, always after normal business hours. Another folder contained travel records for business trips where Sarah had accompanied Robert, even though she wasn't part of the usual executive team. Tom also found a rejected vacation request from Sarah to Robert 3 months before she resigned. A handwritten note read simply, indispensable at the moment. Even more revealing was an email from Robert's wife, Elaine, to HR, questioning why Sarah needed to accompany her husband on so many trips. The email never received an official reply. Tom took photos of everything and sent them to Michael, along with a message. Found concrete evidence their relationship went beyond the professional. We need to talk. At Michael's mansion, the day had started in a routine way. Emma had begun her first day of remote work, organizing financial data Michael had sent her, while the twins played in a playpen nearby. Around noon, Emma noticed Tom seemed quieter than usual. Touching him, she realized he was hot. Not again, she murmured, concerned. She grabbed the thermometer Mrs. Martinez had provided. 100.8 degree typed. Not alarming, but higher than last time. She gave him the baby-safe fever reducer Dr. Klein had prescribed and kept a close watch. An hour later, Leo also began showing signs of fever, registering 101.3 dismay, crying incessantly. It must be a virus, Emma thought, trying to remain calm. They always catch the same bugs. As the afternoon wore on, the situation worsened. Tom began breathing with difficulty, and Leo wouldn't stop crying, refusing even milk. When Tom threw up after taking his medicine, panic overtook Emma. She called Michael, who was in a meeting at the company. I need to take the babies to the hospital, she said, her voice trembling. Tom's having trouble breathing, and Leo won't stop crying. Their fevers are going up. I'm on my way, Michael said immediately. Don't wait for me. Have the driver take you to Memorial Medical Center. I'll call Dr. Klein to meet you there. 20 minutes later, Emma was rushing into the pediatric ER with both babies in her arms. Michael arrived soon after, finding her in the waiting area while the doctors examined the twins. How are they? He asked, unable to hide his worry. They're with the doctors, Emma replied, eyes red from crying. They mentioned something about a respiratory infection. Michael sat next to her, holding her hand. Dr. Klein is on his way. He's the best pediatrician in the city. Emma nodded, grateful. Thank you for coming so quickly. Of course I would. They sat in silence for a few minutes. Emma looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. I've always been afraid of something like this, she finally said, her voice low. Being alone, with no help, if they got really sick. Michael gently squeezed her hand. You're not alone now. Silent tears began rolling down Emma's cheeks. There should be someone else here. Their father should be here. It was the first time she'd mentioned the twins' father since Michael had found her in the rain. What happened with him? Michael asked carefully. Emma wiped her tears, staring at the door through which the doctors had taken her children. Jason. He worked with me at the department store. We started dating. He seemed like a good man. Her voice sounded distant, as though recounting someone else's story. When I discovered I was pregnant, I told him, expecting he might be happy or at least accepting. Instead, he vanished. Stopped going to work, blocked my number. I never saw him again. Michael felt a surge of anger at this man he'd never met. That's awful. The worst part wasn't that, Emma continued. It was realizing I had nowhere to go. My apartment was too expensive to keep alone, especially after I lost my job. I thought about going back to my mom's, but what? I felt so ashamed. Her voice cracked. She always warned me to be careful, not to trust men so easily. And there I was, pregnant and abandoned, exactly what she feared. Did you tell her? Eventually, yes. She offered help, said I could move back, but I couldn't. I was too proud. I wanted to prove I could do it on my own. And that's when things got really tough. Emma nodded. I managed to stay in shelters for a while. I worked any job I could, as long as I could hide my belly, but after the twins were born, it became impossible. Michael tried to imagine Emma's daily struggle, alone, with 2 newborns, no money, no support. The unfairness of it all made him angry. They're my whole life now, Emma said, looking at the ER door. I can't lose them. You won't, Michael assured her. They're in good hands. Dr. Klein arrived just then, his expression serious but reassuring. It's bronchiolitis, he explained, very common in babies their age. We'll keep them under observation tonight, give them supplemental oxygen and IV fluids. The good news is you brought them in before it got worse. Emma let out a shaky breath. Can I stay with them? Of course, the doctor said. A nurse will show you to the room where they'll be admitted. As Emma followed the nurse, Michael pulled Dr. Klein aside. I want the best team on this, cost no object. Already arranged, Michael, the doctor smiled. Emma seems like a good mother. She's extraordinary, Michael said, thoughtful. She's been through things no one should face alone. After the doctor left, Michael stood alone in the hospital corridor, thinking about everything he'd learned in the past few days. The evidence Tom had uncovered, Emma's story of abandonment, his father's secret payments, all connected in a troubling puzzle. It was time to confront Robert Anderson. Not just for himself, but for Emma and the twins. They deserved the truth, and Michael was determined to get it. He took out his phone and sent his father a message. We need to talk. Tomorrow in your office. Urgent and personal. The response came almost immediately. 10 a.m. Don't be late. Michael put away his phone and walked to the room where Emma was with the babies. He stopped at the door, watching her gently stroke Tom's hair while Leo dozed in the adjacent crib, both with small oxygen masks. In that moment, he made a silent promise to them all. The truth would come out, no matter the consequences. Robert Anderson's office occupied the entire top floor of the impressive Anderson Enterprises building. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls provided a panoramic view of the city, symbolizing the power the man held over everything in sight. Michael arrived exactly at 10. The secretary, a stern and efficient woman, announced his arrival and led him directly into the president's office. Robert stood by the window, his back to the door. Tall, with perfectly trimmed grey hair and an impeccable suit, the image of the successful businessman Michael had always known. Punctual as always, Robert said without turning around. A quality I made sure to teach you. Good morning, Dad, Michael answered, keeping his voice firm despite the tension. Robert finally turned, motioning toward the chair in front of his desk. Have a seat. Your message said it was urgent. Michael remained standing. I'd rather not. I don't plan to stay long. One of Robert's eyebrows rose slightly, the only sign of surprise at his son's refusal. As you wish. What do we need to discuss? Michael took an envelope from his suit pocket and placed it on the polished mahogany desk. This, Robert looked at the envelope without touching it, and this would be evidence of a relationship you had with a former employee named Sarah Carter about 30 years ago, and the monthly payments you've been making to her ever since. Robert's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of alarm. You've been investigating my personal life. May I ask why? It wasn't intentional, Michael replied, stepping closer to the desk. I met her daughter, Emma Carter. For the first time in years, Michael saw something he never thought possible. His always controlled father turned visibly pale. Sarah's daughter, Robert's voice faltered. How did you meet her? Michael gave a brief account of finding Emma in the rain, the photo he'd discovered in her wallet, and the subsequent investigation. As he spoke, the tension in the room became almost palpable. She's 30, Dad. The timing perfectly matches the period Sarah worked for you. Michael leaned over the desk. Is Emma your daughter? Robert stood up abruptly and walked to the bar in the corner, pouring himself a whiskey despite the early hour. Another uncharacteristic move for the usually disciplined businessman. My personal life is none of your concern, he said at last, taking a long sip. It became my concern when I took in your possible daughter and her children. Robert's eyes widened. Children? Emma has twin boys, 6 months old. Tom and Leo, Michael said, watching his father's reaction carefully. You didn't know? Robert shook his head, sitting down again. He suddenly looked older, weighed down by secrets kept for too long. I never stayed in touch with Sarah after she quit, he admitted. Those payments were made through a trust fund. Total discretion was part of the deal. What deal? Michael asked, finally sitting. Robert sighed, running a hand through his grey hair. Yes, we had an affair. It lasted almost a year. When your mother started to suspect, Sarah and I decided to end it. And the payments. Severance for an abrupt resignation. Sarah was good at her job, had potential. I thought it only fair to secure her future. Michael looked at his father in disbelief. $5,000 a month for 30 years isn't just severance, Dad. It's hush money. Tension crackled between the two men. Decades of superficial communication and repressed emotions threatened to erupt. What do you want, Michael? Why dig this up now? I want the truth. Michael's voice rose. Emma grew up without a father or the privileges I had, while you sent hush money to ease your conscience. Robert slammed his fist on the desk. It's not that simple. Then explain it. Silence hung between them for several tense seconds. Robert took a deep breath, regaining composure. Sarah never told me she was pregnant, he finally said, voice calmer. When we decided to end things, she quit and left. Weeks later, I got a letter from her lawyer requesting financial arrangements. I assumed it was just about the affair. Pregnancy was never mentioned. Michael studied his father for signs of deceit. I'm telling you the truth, Michael, Robert went on. If Sarah was pregnant when she left, she never told me. If Emma is my daughter, I never knew. Are you sure? Because Emma's mother gave her a photo of you, telling her it was her father. Robert looked genuinely puzzled. It makes no sense. Why would Sarah hide it from me but tell her daughter? She didn't exactly tell her, Michael clarified. She just gave Emma the photo on her 18th birthday with no explanation. Emma's been carrying it around all these years, trying to understand her own identity. Robert stood again, walking back to the window. For a long moment, he merely looked at the city below. "If what you say is true," he said quietly, "then I have a daughter I never knew." Michael saw real vulnerability in his father's face for the first time. "There's a way to confirm." "How?" "A DNA test." Robert turned to face him. "You're suggesting I, and this young woman, take a test?" "Yes, it's the only way to be certain." The businessman weighed the idea for a moment. "And if it's positive, what do you expect me to do?" "That depends on you and Emma," Michael answered honestly. "She grew up without a father. Now she's struggling to raise 2 kids on her own. At the very least, she deserves to know her true origin." Robert picked up the envelope on the desk, opening it for the first time. He looked at the photos of Emma and the twins that Michael had included. His face showed no clear emotion, but his fingers trembled slightly as he handled them. "She looks like Sarah," he murmured. "She looks like you too," Michael noted. "She has your eyes." Robert placed the photos back in the envelope and handed it to Michael. "I'll do the test, but regardless of the result, this stays strictly confidential. I have a company to protect, a reputation." Anger flared up in Michael again. "That's your main concern, your reputation." "Don't be naive," Robert retorted. "A scandal like this wouldn't just hurt me, it would hurt you as well, and the company you'll one day inherit." They stared at each other, the gulf between their worldviews more apparent than ever. "I'll speak to Emma," Michael said at last. "It's her choice whether to do the test." Robert nodded. "Let me know the results." Michael headed to the door, then paused. "Dad, if the test is positive, I expect you to do the right thing. Emma deserves more than secret money transfers." Without waiting for a response, Michael left, leaving Robert Anderson alone with the weight of his past decisions and the possible consequences awaiting them all. Michael drove in silence, the city traffic blurring past the windows. His conversation with his father still echoed in his mind, every word and reaction weighing heavily on him. He parked outside the mansion but stayed in the car for a few minutes, trying to gather his thoughts. How would he tell Emma? How would he explain that the man who might be her father claimed he never knew she existed? With a deep sigh, he finally headed inside. Mrs. Martinez informed him Emma was in the nursery. The twins had been discharged that morning, still needing special care but out of danger. Michael climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling monumental. He found Emma in the armchair by the crib, rocking Leo while Tom slept. Both babies still looked pale but were breathing comfortably. "How are they?" he asked quietly. Emma looked up, offering a faint smile. "Much better. Dr. Klein said they'll recover quickly." "That's great." Michael sat on the edge of the bed. "And you? How are you holding up?" "Tired but relieved." She studied his face. "You don't look so good. Did something happen?" Michael ran a hand over his face, not sure where to begin. "I met my father today." Emma immediately tensed. "And I told him about you, about the photo," Michael said, pausing. "About the possibility that you two are father and daughter," Emma finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Michael nodded, watching her reaction closely. He was shocked. "Shocked how?" Emma asked cautiously. "Genuinely surprised. He admitted to having an affair with your mother, but insists he never knew she was pregnant." Emma dropped her gaze to Leo, who was now dozing in her arms. Her hands trembled slightly. "Do you believe him?" Michael weighed his answer. "I'm not sure. He seemed sincere, but my father's always been good at hiding his true feelings." Carefully, Emma laid Leo in the crib next to his brother, her back turned to Michael for a moment. "Then why the payments all these years? It feels more like he was paying her off. He said it was severance for the sudden resignation. A way to ensure her future." Emma turned to face him, eyes shining with tears. "A way to make up for ruining her life. You mean—" Michael had no defense for that. He stood and approached her, not quite sure how to comfort her. "What else did he say?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "I suggested a DNA test for confirmation." He agreed. Emma walked over to the window, hugging herself as though she felt cold, despite the warm room. A DNA test, she repeated, testing the words. If it's positive, then what? He said he wants to meet you, if that's the case. A bitter laugh escaped Emma's lips. 30 years later, he wants to meet me. Like it's that simple. Michael let her anger burn. It was warranted, more than warranted. I know how you must feel, he said after a moment. Emma spun around. No, you don't. You grew up with him. Had everything I never had. Education, security, opportunities. Her words weren't accusatory, just painfully honest. You're right, Michael admitted. I can't truly understand. But I'm on your side, Emma, no matter what you decide. She returned her gaze to the sleeping twins, her initial anger fading into deep sadness. My whole life I wondered what he was like. I created 1,000 scenarios in my head. Sometimes he was a good man who just couldn't be with us, other times a selfish jerk. Emma wiped away a solitary tear. I never imagined he could be Robert Anderson, the real estate tycoon, and I never, ever thought I might have a brother. Half-brother, Michael corrected automatically, then smiled. Not that it really matters, Emma offered a faint smile. No, it doesn't. They fell silent for a moment, the soft sound of the baby's breathing filling the room. What do you think I should do? Emma asked finally. About the test, Michael thought carefully. I can't decide for you, but I believe the truth, whatever it is better than the uncertainty you've carried all these years. Emma sat down in the armchair again, looking small and vulnerable. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared to find out he really is my father, that he knew and ignored me my whole life. Scared to find out he isn't, and I still won't know who I really am. You know who you are, Michael said, sitting across from her. You're Emma Carter, a strong woman who survived everything life has thrown at her. You're a mother to 2 adorable boys. You're smart and determined. No test will change that. Silent tears now slipped down Emma's cheeks. What if I take the test and it's positive? How does that change our lives, the babies' lives? They'd have a grandfather. You'd be entitled to a share of the Anderson legacy if you wanted it. I don't want his money, Emma protested. I know, but think of the twins, of their future. And you'd finally have answers. Emma sighed. What if he tries to use us or, on worse, rejects us outright? I've had too much rejection already. I won't let that happen, Michael promised, his voice firm. No matter the result, you and the babies have me now. His statement hung in the air, a pledge, a bond formed under extraordinary circumstances, yet deeply genuine to both of them. At that moment, Michael's phone buzzed. A message from his father. I've reconsidered our talk. If the test is positive, I want to do the right thing. Emma deserves to know her origin, and I deserve a chance to know her. Let me know when you've made a decision. Michael showed the message to Emma. She read it silently, her emotions impossible to read. I'll do the test, she finally said, her voice more resolute than before. Not for him or even for me, for my children. They deserve to know where they come from. Michael nodded, respecting her courage. I'll make the arrangements. But Michael, Emma looked him in the eyes, no matter what happens, promise me this won't change what we've built here. Promise you won't disappear from our lives. The vulnerability in her voice hit Michael hard. I promise. We're in this together now, Emma. Whatever happens. One of the babies began to stir in the crib. Emma stood to tend to him but briefly touched Michael's arm, a simple gesture of trust and connection. That night, while Emma finally slept, exhausted from the emotional toll and the nights in the hospital, Michael sent his father a message. She agreed to the test. We can proceed. The response was almost immediate. Thank you, son. It was just 2 words, but Michael couldn't recall the last time his father had called him son with any hint of sincerity. Perhaps, amid all the chaos and uncertainty, something good could emerge for them all. The white envelope lay on the living room table for almost 10 minutes before anyone had the courage to open it. Michael watched Emma, who stared at it as though it were dangerous. Do you want me to open it? He offered gently. Emma took a deep breath, shaking her head. No, I need to do this. With trembling fingers, she tore the envelope and withdrew the sheets of paper. Her eyes skimmed through the technical jargon until she found what she was looking for. Probability of paternity, 99.98%, she read out loud, her voice almost inaudible. Michael sat beside her on the couch. So it's official. Emma let the papers fall into her lap, silent tears forming in her eyes. They weren't of sadness or joy, just a release after 3 decades of uncertainty. Robert Anderson is my father, she said, as if testing the reality of those words. Michael placed his hand on hers. How do you feel? I'm not sure, she admitted. Relieved to finally know, angry about all the lost years, confused about what to do now. Maybe all of it. He wants to meet you, Michael said gently. When I called to tell him about the test, he asked for a meeting. Only if you're willing, of course. Emma wiped her tears, regaining some composure. I need to look him in the eye. I need to hear from him why he was never in my life. We could arrange it in a neutral location. Maybe the River Park Hotel restaurant, in a private room. Emma nodded, glancing at the baby monitor for the twins, who were napping upstairs. And the boys? We can leave them with Mrs. Martinez or... Michael hesitated. He also asked about the twins. Emma looked surprised. He wants to meet them too. Yes, he said if they're his grandchildren, he'd like to see them. A range of emotions flitted across Emma's face, maternal protectiveness, distrust, and maybe a glimmer of hope. Maybe later. I want to talk to him alone first. 3 days later, the meeting was set for 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Michael arrived at the River Park Hotel with Emma, who looked visibly nervous, despite trying to hide it. He's waiting in the private room, Michael informed her, guiding her through the elegant lobby. Emma straightened the simple dress she'd bought for the occasion. Do I look okay? You look perfect, Michael assured her. Remember, he's the one who needs to make a good impression on you, not the other way around. At the door of the private room, Emma paused. You'll stay, right? I'll be right nearby, he pointed to a table in the restaurant, to give you privacy, but close enough if you need me. Emma nodded, took a deep breath, and went in. Robert Anderson stood near the window, looking out at the city. Hearing the door, he turned slowly. For the first time in decades, Michael saw something he'd never expected. His father appeared nervous. Emma, Robert said, his voice softer than usual. Thank you for coming. Emma stayed near the door, studying the man in front of her, the man whose blood ran in her veins, yet was a complete stranger. Mr. Anderson, she replied formally. Please, have a seat, Robert said, pulling out a chair for her. Michael quietly shut the door behind her, leaving them alone. 20 minutes later, watching from a distance, Michael saw something incredible. His father, always so composed, was wiping away tears. Emma, too, was crying, her face intense with emotions Michael had never seen in her before. Clearly, the conversation had taken an emotional turn. Michael resisted the urge to approach, respecting the private moment between father and daughter. Inside the room, Emma was finishing her story. And when I lost the apartment, the shelters were our only option. Some were awful, others just bearable. The day Michael found me, we'd been kicked out of the last place with available beds. I was desperate, walking in the rain with no destination. Robert covered his face with his hands, trying to process everything he'd heard. When he looked at Emma again, his eyes were red. If I'd known. If your mother had told me. His voice failed. I never would have let you go through all of this. Why did she hide it from you? Emma asked, the question that had haunted her for years. Robert took a deep breath. From what I gathered today, Sarah believed I'd reject her, demand she end the pregnancy to avoid a scandal. My reputation with women at that time wasn't exactly great. Would you have done that? No, Robert said firmly. Never. Regardless of the circumstances, I would have taken responsibility. How can I believe that? The money you sent felt like hush money. Robert shook his head. It was a mistake. I should have made sure how the money was being used, whether you two were okay, but I respected Sarah's wish to keep her distance, thinking it would be best for her after our affair ended. Emma took this in silently. I know I can't make up for 30 lost years, Robert continued, nor fix everything you've been through. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your life now and my grandchildren's lives." Mention of the twins softened Emma's expression. "They're the most important thing in my world." "I'd like to meet them," Robert said, genuine longing in his voice. Emma thought for a moment, then took out her phone. "Michael, could you bring the boys now? They're with Mrs. Martinez in the lobby." 15 minutes later, Michael entered the private room carrying both twins, one in each arm. Tom and Leo, recovered from their recent illness, were awake and curious. Robert stood at once, eyes fixed on the babies. "May I?" Emma nodded, taking Leo from Michael's arms and stepping toward Robert. "This is Leo." "And that's Tom." With slightly trembling hands, Robert accepted baby Leo, at first awkwardly, then more confidently. "Hello, Leo," he said softly. "I'm your grandfather." The baby studied him with wide eyes, then unexpectedly smiled, a big, toothless grin, drool and all, which completely transformed Robert's face. "He smiled at me," Robert said in wonder. "He likes new faces," Emma explained, cradling Tom. "This one's more cautious. He needs time to warm up to strangers." Robert glanced between the two babies, clearly overwhelmed. "They're perfect, Emma. Absolutely perfect." For an instant, Michael witnessed a scene he'd never imagined. His tough-minded father entirely captivated by two babies. For the first time, there was a genuine crack in Robert's armor. "I've missed so much," Robert murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "There's still time," Emma said, her voice gentler now. It wasn't a full forgiveness or unconditional acceptance, but a small doorway, a possibility of a new beginning. Michael watched the three of them, his newly discovered biological family, together for the first time. It was an imperfect scene, built on secrets and pain, but also on a truth finally revealed. While Leo babbled happily in the arms of the grandfather he'd just met, and Tom stared intently at everyone with wise eyes, Michael realized that no matter the mistakes of the past, a new chapter was beginning for them all. 2 days after the meeting at the River Park Hotel, Emma was playing with the twins in the mansion's garden when Michael approached with a cautious look. "Robert thinks we should contact your mother," he said, sitting beside her on the lawn. "He believes it's time to settle everything at once." Emma stayed silent, watching Tom try to crawl across the blanket on the grass. "What do you think?" Michael pressed gently. "I haven't spoken to her in months," Emma finally said. "Our last conversation was tense. She wanted me to move back with her. She has a right to know what's going on, and maybe to explain her side of the story." Emma sighed deeply. "You're right, I'll call her today." The call was brief, but full of emotion. Emma said only the essentials: that she was safe, the twins were fine, and that something important had happened. After a long silence on the other end, Sarah Carter agreed to come. "She's arriving tomorrow," Emma said after hanging up, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't tell her about Robert or the DNA test. I thought it best to talk in person." The next morning, the mansion buzzed with a subdued tension. Emma spent hours anxiously preparing, rearranging the baby's things, checking the guest room for her mother, rehearsing in her mind what to say. "You look more nervous now than when you met Robert," Michael commented, finding her pacing in the living room. "It's different. With Robert, I had no expectations. With my mom," she stopped by the window. "We have a complicated history, and now I have to confront her about the secrets she's kept all my life." The doorbell rang, and Emma froze. "Want me to get it?" "No," she said, squaring her shoulders. "I need to." Sarah Carter was a middle-aged woman, with graceful features still visible beneath the lines of age and hardship. Seeing her daughter, her defenses fell immediately. "Emma," she exclaimed, pulling her into a tight embrace, "I've been so worried. Why didn't you come to me when things got hard?" Emma let out the tears she'd been holding back. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was ashamed." They held each other in the foyer, years of emotional distance beginning to dissolve. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah noticed Michael standing discreetly nearby. "Who is—" she began, then her eyes widened in recognition. "You look exactly like—" "Michael Anderson," he introduced himself, extending a hand. "Robert's son." Sarah's face went pale. "How—" I found the photo in Emma's wallet when I took her in, Michael explained. One thing led to another. We did a DNA test, Mum, Emma said. Robert is my father. Sarah sank into a chair, her legs failing her. You met him? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Yes. He never knew about me, Mum. He said you never told him. Sarah covered her face. I thought I was protecting us. At that moment, footsteps sounded in the hall. Robert had arrived, as previously arranged with Michael. Seeing Sarah for the first time in 3 decades, he froze, visibly affected. Sarah! Robert! Her voice was barely audible. The silence that followed seemed to hold all the lost years, unspoken words, and choices that had shaped their separate lives. Michael and Emma exchanged glances, feeling like intruders in this charged reunion. Why didn't you tell me? Robert finally asked. I was afraid, Sarah replied, regaining a bit of composure. You were married, powerful. I thought you'd try to control everything, or worse, force me not to have the baby. I would never do that, Robert protested. How could I know? You had a reputation, Robert. The tension was palpable. Emma took Michael's hand instinctively, seeking support. We have a lot to discuss, Robert said, seating himself at a respectful distance. Including how to handle this publicly. Publicly, Sarah asked, alarmed. If this leaks to the press, it'll be a scandal, Robert explained. I need to protect the company, and all of you. No one has to know, Sarah insisted. Sooner or later, people will notice Robert Anderson's new daughter, Michael intervened. We need a strategy. I think we're skipping steps, Emma said suddenly. Before we decide how the world sees us, we need to figure out who we are to each other, whether we really want to be a family. The 4 of them looked at one another, recognizing Emma's words as the truth. Decades of secrets, questionable decisions, and separate lives had converged, creating a dynamic none of them fully knew how to navigate. But one thing was certain. There was no turning back to what they'd been. Secret Iris to the Anderson Empire, the headline screamed on the front page of the City Chronicle. A photo showed Emma leaving the River Park Hotel with Michael, their faces partially covered but identifiable. Michael tossed the paper onto the breakfast table, where Emma was feeding Leo. It's out. How? Emma asked, her face going pale at the headline. Someone at the hotel, probably. The article doesn't have many details, just speculation, but it's enough to stir up trouble. Michael's phone rang. It was Robert. You saw the paper. Just now. What do we do? I'm calling an emergency meeting with PR. Don't speak to anyone until we have a plan. The moment Michael hung up, the phone started ringing again. Journalists, tabloids, all clamoring for the story. The mansion's doorbell also rang insistently. Reporters are at the gate, Mrs. Martinez informed them, worried. And there are photographers with telephoto lenses trying to see into the house. Emma hugged Leo protectively. The babies. They can't be exposed like this. Michael quickly drew the curtains. Let's take them to the back room, the one without street-facing windows. As they rearranged the makeshift nursery, Emma seemed dazed. This is insane. Yesterday I was just a single mom no one knew. Today I'm a target for the paparazzi. Welcome to the Anderson family, Michael said grimly, and this is only the start. At Anderson Enterprises, Robert was facing a nightmare of his own. The board demanded explanations. Shareholders were calling with concerns about the company's image, and his current wife, Diane, was confronting him in his office. 30 years, Robert. For 30 years you paid to hide this woman and her daughter. Diane threw the newspaper onto the desk. How am I supposed to deal with this? It's not what it looks like. He knew how weak that sounded, even to himself. Isn't it? Then explain why I'm finding out about a stepdaughter through the tabloids. Robert felt the weight of decades of questionable decisions collapsing around him. I didn't know about Emma until a few weeks ago. Sarah never told me about the pregnancy. Diane stared at him, incredulous, and I'm supposed to believe that. It's the truth. Robert sounded defeated, a rarity for him. I made plenty of mistakes, Diane, but I never knowingly hid a daughter. Back at the mansion, Emma peeked through a gap in the curtains at the reporters gathered at the gate. I never imagined it would be like this. Being an Anderson has its challenges, Michael said, entering the room with 2 cups of tea. I learned that early. How did you cope growing up? She asked. Michael sat beside her. Not so well, to be honest. I became withdrawn, distrustful. I don't want the twins to go through that. Emma glanced at the babies, who were happily oblivious to the chaos. What are we going to do? First, ensure their safety, then face the storm together. Emma's phone rang. It was Sarah. The reporters found me, she said, voice shaking. They're all over my house in Cedar Grove. Come here, Emma said without hesitation. We'll be safer if we stick together. That impulsive decision surprised Michael, but he immediately agreed. I'll send the driver with a security detail to pick her up. Hours later, with Sarah safe at the mansion and reporters kept at bay by newly hired security, the makeshift family gathered in the library. Robert arrived discreetly through a back entrance. We need a plan, he declared, looking drained but resolute. PR advises we issue an official statement introducing Emma as my newly discovered daughter. Without sordid details, Michael added, just the basics. Emma shook her head, still processing her new reality. And then what? Then you decide, Robert said. You can claim your place in the family publicly or keep your distance. Whichever path you choose, I'll provide financial and legal support. I don't want your money, Emma protested. I just want peace so I can raise my kids. Unfortunately, Michael said gently, now that this story is out, peace will be hard to come by. We need to stand together. Robert glanced from Sarah to Emma and Michael. Decades ago, I chose the easy route. Maintain distance, send money, pretend nothing had happened. I won't do that again. To everyone's surprise, Sarah was the first to reach out. Then let's face this together for the babies. As the adults discussed strategy, Tom and Leo began wailing in unison. In a practiced, synchronized move, Emma and Michael each scooped up a twin. Robert watched this with a mixture of admiration and regret. We're an unusual family, he remarked, but still a family. And for the first time since the media storm broke, Emma felt they might actually get through it together. 2 weeks after the initial media frenzy, life at the Anderson mansion began to settle into a new rhythm. The official family statement and a carefully managed interview with Robert and Emma had calmed much of the public's curiosity. Reporters still hovered occasionally, but the chaos had lessened. Emma was browsing a university catalogue while the twins played on the living room rug. Michael walked in and immediately noticed the pamphlet. Thinking about going back to school, he asked, sitting next to her. Business administration, she said. I never finished my degree. Now that the boys are a bit older and my mom is here to help, she smiled, still getting used to how drastically her life had changed. Sarah had decided to stay, occupying a guest room. Though initially hesitant, she now spent hours with her grandsons, making up for lost time. Anderson Enterprises has a program to support employees who study, Michael mentioned. There's also an opening in the finance department that'd be perfect for you. Emma closed the catalog, thoughtful. I don't want people thinking I got the job just because I'm Robert's daughter. They'll see you earned it. The family name just opens the door. What you do afterward is up to you. It was a dynamic Michael knew well, the opportunities and burdens of being an Anderson. In recent days, he'd been surprised by how much he related to Emma and how she understood him in ways no one else had. I'll think about it, she said, smiling. The front door opened, announcing Robert's arrival. He carried a large package wrapped in colorful paper. For the boys, he explained, handing it to Emma. It's an activity center. The sales clerk said it's good for motor development. It was the third gift in 2 weeks. Robert was clearly trying to make up for lost time, though often awkwardly. Thank you, Emma said, accepting it. But you know you don't have to bring gifts every time you come, right? Robert nodded, slightly embarrassed. I just wish I'd been around sooner. Michael observed with interest. His relationship with his father had always been formal, almost businesslike. Seeing him now, genuinely trying to connect with Emma and the grandkids, revealed a side of Robert he'd never seen. I was telling Emma about the opening in the finance department, Michael said, changing the subject. You'd be perfect for it, Robert agreed immediately. No pressure, though. Only when you're ready. Emma smiled. noticing the genuine effort. "Thanks, I'll consider it." The doorbell rang and Sarah stepped into the living room from the garden. Must be the pediatrician. "I scheduled a home visit for the boys today." "I'll get it," Michael offered, standing up. While he left, Emma noticed a somewhat shy glance shared between her parents. Despite decades apart and complicated circumstances, there was clearly a lingering bond between them. Sarah moved closer, picking up Leo. "He's getting so active," she said proudly. "Yesterday he almost rolled over by himself." "You've been amazing, Mom," Emma said sincerely. "I don't know how I'd have handled all this without you." Sarah stroked her daughter's face gently. "I'm finally doing what I should have done years ago, being here for you with no secrets." Robert cleared his throat, visibly touched by the moment. "I guess we're all learning how to be a family in our own ways." When Michael returned with the pediatrician, he found the three of them chatting comfortably, a scene unthinkable just weeks ago. Later that night, after the babies were asleep and Sarah and Robert had retired, Michael found Emma on the veranda gazing up at the stars. "A penny for your thoughts," he said, offering her a glass of wine. She took it, smiling, just thinking about how everything changed so fast, from being homeless in the rain to this. She gestured at the mansion and all it represented. "Any regrets?" "No," she replied immediately. "Confused at times, overwhelmed often but not regretful." Michael settled into the chair beside her. "I've cut back my hours at the company. For the first time in years, I'm not the first in and the last out." "What changed?" she asked. He looked at her with a genuine smile. "You, the twins. I realized I built my entire life around work, like my father did. Then you came along and showed me there's so much more outside those corporate walls." Emma gently touched his hand. "So we saved each other, I guess." "I think so," Michael agreed. "Who would have thought a rainy night could change our lives so completely?" They sat in comfortable silence, contemplating the night sky. What had begun as a chance encounter had grown into a precious bond, siblings who, as only children, never expected to find each other. Inside, two small twins slept soundly, unaware that their mere existence had brought a fractured family together, reshaping lives that would never be the same. The Anderson mansion's garden was decorated with delicate string lights hanging between the trees. A long table had been set up under the early evening sky, adorned with wildflowers in simple vases and candles in silver holders. It was a small celebration just for the family, marking 3 months since Emma and her babies had entered the Andersons' lives. "A toast," Michael said, raising his glass, "to the family we lost and found and the paths that brought us here." Everyone lifted their glasses, Robert, Sarah, Emma, and even the twins, with their colorful baby bottles. Tom babbled something that sounded a bit like "dada," prompting smiles all around the table. "They grow so quickly," Sarah remarked, adjusting Leo's bib. "I can't believe they're already trying to talk." Mrs. Martinez served dinner with her usual discreet efficiency, now fully accustomed to the household's new dynamic. The past months had brought changes for everyone, some subtle, others profound. "I have an announcement," Emma said when dessert was served. "I finalized my enrollment at the university. Classes start next semester, in the evening program." "That's wonderful," Sarah replied, squeezing her daughter's hand. "And I've also accepted the part-time position in the finance department," Emma continued, glancing at Robert. "I want to learn the business from the ground up on my own merit." Robert nodded, pride evident in his eyes. "The company's lucky to have you." "I'm sure you'll rise on your own." "And the babies?" Michael asked, concerned about the logistics she would face. "That's the second part of my announcement." Emma took a breath. "I found an apartment in a building near the company. It's perfect for us, but—" "You're moving out." Michael's voice betrayed his disappointment. "Actually," Emma smiled, "I was wondering if Mom would like to come live with us, to help with the boys and, well, to finally be together again." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure, honey? You don't have to—" "I'm sure," Emma affirmed. "We spent too long apart because of pride and secrets. I don't want that anymore." Sarah clasped her daughter's hand, no words needed between them. "As for you," Emma turned to Michael, "I hope you'll visit so often you won't even notice we've left." "Count on it," he replied, clearly relieved. Actually, I have an announcement of my own. Everyone looked at him curiously. I decided to restructure my division at the company, Michael explained. I've created a support program for single parents, offering flexible hours and on-site childcare. Robert looked surprised. I didn't know about that. It's recent, Michael replied. Seeing what Emma went through, how society treats single mothers, made me realize we can do better. Much better. Emma regarded her brother, proud of the transformation she saw in him. Once single-mindedly focused on results, Michael was now a man who looked beyond the bottom line. Did the board approve? Robert asked. I haven't formally presented it yet. I wanted your take first. Robert paused, then placed his glass down decisively. I think it's time Anderson Enterprises embraced a stronger family policy. We'll present it together. Michael looked astonished. His father, traditionally conservative about corporate changes, seldom supported initiatives without a direct profit margin. I also have my own announcements, Robert continued, looking at each of them. First, I've revised my will. Emma and the twins are now officially included, with the same rights as Michael. Dad, you don't have to, Emma began. Let me finish, Robert interrupted gently. It's not just about money or property, it's about recognition. You're as much an Anderson as Michael or me. He paused, visibly moved. The second announcement is more personal. I'm cutting back my hours at the company. Diane and I agreed we should enjoy life more and spend more time with my grandchildren. Michael nearly choked on his wine. You're retiring? Not completely, Robert said with a grin. Just no longer the first one in and the last one out, like someone here once mentioned. Emma realized her father was genuinely changing, likely motivated by the second chance fate had granted him. What about the future? Sarah asked quietly. How do we handle all this? The press, questions, people. One day at a time, Emma replied simply. We can't control what others think or say. We can only live honestly from now on. Robert stood, surprising everyone. Come with me. I have something to show you. He led them to a secluded section of the garden, where a small cherry tree had recently been planted. A discreet plaque at its base read, Anderson Carter Family, A New Beginning. I planted it last week, Robert said. It'll grow along with the twins. Every spring, it'll bloom and remind us of this turning point in our lives. Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she gently touched the young tree. Michael wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and Sarah held her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Robert joined them. In that instant, beneath the evening sky and the tiny tree symbolizing their shared future, they were no longer fragments of separate lives, but a family, imperfect, scarred by the past, yet determined to grow together. Leo began fussing and Tom joined him, as though sensing the solemn moment and deciding to lighten the mood. Emma laughed, picking up Tom while Michael scooped up Leo. I think they're telling us it's bath time, not a time for sentimental speeches. Can I help? Robert offered, surprising them all. Sure, Emma said, handing Tom to his grandfather. Just be ready to get soaked. They love splashing water everywhere. Challenge accepted, Robert smiled, holding his grandson with a confidence he hadn't shown a few weeks ago. As they walked back inside, the sky now dotted with stars, Emma knew the path ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be challenges, adjustments, maybe even relapses into old patterns. But for the first time in her life, she wouldn't be facing them alone. The storm that had driven her to Michael's door on that rainy night had finally passed, revealing not just a temporary shelter, but a permanent home, not necessarily a physical place, but in the connections they had built, the truths they had faced, and the love that slowly but surely was taking root among them.